Hi, this is Professor Correa. I'm going to teach you the imperfect tense in Spanish, which is another form of past tense. Expressing the past tense in Spanish. When speaking about the past, you can use either the preterite or the imperfect, depending on the sentence and the meaning you wish to convey. You have already learned to talk about the past, using the preterite tense for actions that began and ended at a specific definite time. In this example, you can see, El verano pasado visité Barcelona. Me encantó. Last summer, I visited Barcelona. I love it. El verano pasado is the indicator of a beginning and ended time of this action. That's what this statement is in the preterite. But there is another form of past tense, the imperfect. The imperfect tense is another way to talk about the past, but we use it to describe actions without any indication of their beginning or end. While the preterite is more specific, the imperfect is more detailed. Example, ayer fui al parque is a sentence in the preterite. Yesterday I went to the park. It's specifically when it occurred. But if I want to add detail, I could say, estaba cansado. I was tired. In this case, because I'm providing detailed information about the surrounding of the action, I use the imperfect tense. In this case is estaba, I was. In English, we often translate the imperfect tense as used to or would. Take a look at some of these examples. De niño yo iba a la playa. I could translate this as a child, I used to go to the beach. Or, as a child, I would go to the beach. Iba is the verb ir in the imperfect tense. How do we conjugate this imperfect tense? Let's take a look. The AR regular verbs such as caminar can be conjugated as follows. The ending will be aba. Yo caminaba. Tú caminabas. Él, ella, usted caminaba. Nosotros caminábamos. Notice the accent on the nosotros form. Vosotros caminabais. Ellos, ellas, ustedes caminaban. Note, since the yo and the usted, él, ella forms are the same, we often use the subject pronouns to avoid confusion, since they both are conjugated the same way. Caminaba. Let's take a look at ER, IR ending regular verbs. They both share the same conjugation in the imperfect. Let's take a look at the verb to eat. Comía, comías, comía, comíamos, comíais, comían. If you notice, the ending will be ia. For IR ending verbs like to live, vivir, vivía, vivías, vivía, vivíamos, vivíais. Again, the yo and the singular he, she, or usted share the same conjugation, so it's better to include the subject to clarify. Vivían. There are only three regular verbs in the imperfect tense. They are ir, to go, ser, to be, ver, to see. Ir, iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, ibais, iban. Notice the accent on the nosotros form, íbamos. Ser, era, eras, era, éramos, erais, eran. Take a close look again at the accent on the nosotros form. Ver, veía, veíais, veía, veíamos, veíais, veían. Again, an accent on the nosotros form. The verb haber is a very special verb because it helps us to express in the present tense the existence of something when we say there is. So In Spanish, we say I for there is, or there were. But había will be the form in the past. There was, or there were, or there used to be. For example, someone asked this question. The niño, ¿cómo era tu cuarto? ¿Qué había? As a kid, well, how was your room like? What was in there? So if you want to specifically in detail say how that room looked like, you could use the verb haber in the past. Había una ventana, una cama sencilla, y no había una computadora. There was a window, a single bed, and there was not a computer. We use había to describe what's the surrounding, what there was there. Let's take a look at the uses of the imperfect. I'm going to classify it in 4 basic uses. Number 1. Use the imperfect tense for actions that were repeated several times in the past that became habitual. Example. Siempre montaba bicicleta después de la escuela. In English, you could say, I used to ride my bike after school. Or, I would ride my bike after school. If you notice, in this sentence, siempre is an indicator that this action became habitual or was repeated several times. So when we should use this imperfect in that case? The following expressions of time can use us to use the imperfect because they refer to an action that was repeated or habitual. So pay attention to the following expressions. Generalmente, generally, or often. A menudo, often. Muchas veces, several times. Todos los días, every day. Siempre, always. Nunca, never. So take a look at this example. Después de la escuela, siempre leía mi libro favorito. After school, I always read my favorite book. So the word siempre, always, is an indicator or can cue us that we need to use the imperfect tense because it refers to something that was completed several times in the past. Use number 2. In a narration, use the imperfect to give us background details such as the time when something occurred. Example, eran las 2 de la tarde. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. To give us details about the location where an event occurred. Estaba en el parque. I was in the park. Weather. Era un día de otoño. Hacía frío. It was a day in the fall. It was cold. To talk about the mood, todos estábamos muy contentos. All of us were happy. To give detail about the age of the person when this event occurred. Yo tenía 14 años. I was 14 years old. Or to say the physical, mental, or emotional state at the time when this action occurred. No me sentía bien. Tenía dolor de cabeza y estaba cansado. I was not feeling well. I had a headache and I was tired. The imperfect tense use number 3. Certain verbs express non-physical actions. They most likely are conjugated in the imperfect. Example, no lo sabía. I didn't know. So since this action is a non-physical action, we use the imperfect tense. More examples. Pensaba que tenía clase. I thought I had class. Yo no quería ir al parque. I didn't feel like going to the park. Or I didn't want to go to the park. Ella prefería quedarse en casa. She preferred to stay home. Or me gustaba jugar al fútbol. I like to play football. Use number 4. Use the imperfect tense to mention ongoing events in the past or to mention that 2 events were happening simultaneously. Example. La profesora estaba hablando mientras los estudiantes estaban escuchando. The teacher was talking while the students were listening. In this case, the 2 actions, listening and talking, were happening simultaneously. Sometimes an ongoing action is interrupted by another event that occurred unexpectedly. In that case, we will see the preterite being used. Example. Los estudiantes estaban estudiando cuando el profesor llegó. Students were studying when the teacher arrived. In this case, the imperfect help us to build the progressive form, whereas the preterite, arrived, llegó, is the action that interrupts. You are going to learn this one a little bit further in the course, but in the meantime, pay attention to the formation of the progressive form in the past, using the verb estar in the imperfect, estaban, and the gerund, estudiando. Let's summarize what we learned so far about the imperfect tense. The imperfect tense is another form of the past with very specific uses. First, to describe repeated habitual actions in the past, like when you say, I used to go every summer. To describe the details surrounding an event in the past, like the time, the weather, the age. It was sunny, it was 7 o'clock, I was 12 years old. To describe non-physical, emotional, or mental states in the past, such as I was tired, I was thinking, I wanted, or I liked. To describe simultaneous actions in the past, I was listening while writing. Or to describe an action that was in progress when something else unexpectedly happened. She was driving when she saw an accident. Thank you, and I hope you have now a better idea of how to use the imperfect tense. Gracias.